All right. Welcome back, everyone. We're ready for another deep dive today, folks. February 19th, 2025. Big day for news.
Lots going on. Yeah.
Got politics, international stuff. Oh, and some interesting economic twists and turns to unpack, as always.
Should be interesting.
Definitely. So I've got our usual mix of top news stories from various sources all compiled for us to really dig into and analyze, get the big picture of what's making headlines today.
Exactly. Gives us a snapshot of what's going on in the world, what people are talking about.
Right. And some of these stories, I got to say, are pretty intriguing. We've got, American companies maybe heading back to Russia,
Interesting.
and President Trump might be on a collision course with some independent agencies. That could be interesting, to say the least.
Definitely some potential for fireworks there.
Big time. So let's jump right in, shall we? First up, this executive order from President Trump, the one aiming to give him more control over independent agencies. That seems like a pretty big deal, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Huge implications. Potentially some serious constitutional conflicts brewing there.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, you see, these independent agencies, they were set up to operate kind of outside of the president's direct control, right? They provide expert analysis, oversight, that sort of thing.
Right, right. To keep things in check.
Exactly. They're like the referees in a game. They're supposed to be impartial, make sure everyone's playing by the rules. But this executive order, it could really blur those lines.
So you're saying it messes with the balance of power.
Yeah, essentially. And we've seen these kinds of power struggles throughout history, right? They often
Yeah.
end up in court battles, big legal fights over the separation of powers.
That makes sense. So this could be the beginning of a long legal battle then.
Potentially, yes. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Definitely. And speaking of battles, we've also got these resignations happening. Big names, too, like Michelle King, David LeBrick. They've stepped down. And it seems like this whole DOGE thing is at the center of it.
Yeah.
What exactly is DOGE anyway? I'm still a little fuzzy on that.
So DOGE, that's the Department of Government Efficiency. Basically, it's Elon Musk's big plan to revamp the entire federal bureaucracy.
Okay, I remember hearing about that. Lots of buzz about efficiency, cutting costs.
Right. Streamline processes, eliminate redundancies, all that.
Makes sense in theory. But these resignations,
Mm.
there's got to be more to it, right?
Right. So here's where it gets tricky. DOGE wants access to, get this, sensitive IRS data.
Whoa, that's a bit much, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of people are raising eyebrows at that.
Mm.
DOGE says they need this data to find areas for improvement, but critics are saying, hang on, this is a massive invasion of privacy.
And giving a lot of power to a group that wasn't elected by the people.
Exactly. So it's this whole debate about efficiency versus privacy. Very heated topic.
No kidding. Okay, switching gears a bit here. We've got the Trump administration canceling State Department subscriptions to some major news outlets, the New York Times, Reuters, places like that.
Yeah, I saw that. They're saying it's about cutting costs.
Right, but a lot of folks are seeing it as a way to control the narrative. What do you make of it?
Well, I mean, cutting off access to those sources could create a real information vacuum, right? The State Department, they depend on these outlets to stay informed, understand global events.
Get different perspectives, the whole picture.
Precisely. So without them, there's a risk of relying on, well, less reliable sources, potentially biased information, and that could impact diplomatic decisions.
So it's not just about saving money then. It's about information control.
Yeah. It raises questions about transparency, too. The public's right to know.
Big questions, for sure. All right, let's talk about Secretary of State Marco Rubio now. He's been busy. Just finished up visits to Russia and the UAE. What's the significance of those trips, given everything going on globally right now?
Oh, those are big ones, especially with the Ukraine conflict still going on.
Right, because that's really reshaped things on the world stage, hasn't it?
Completely. You've got Russia increasingly isolated, the U.S. trying to keep the pressure on while also keeping those diplomatic channels open. It's a delicate balance.
And where does the UAE fit into all of this?
They're walking a tightrope, trying to stay on good terms with both the U.S. and Russia. They've got their own interests, of course, economic, strategic.
Gotcha. So Rubio's visits are basically him trying to navigate this whole messy situation, find some common ground.
Exactly. It's a complicated web of relationships he's dealing with.
I can imagine. Now, here's a curveball for you. American companies might be heading back to Russia. I mean, this is right in the middle of all this tension. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, no, pretty surprising. The Russian Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is basically a huge investment fund owned by the government, they're saying they expect a wave of American companies returning in the second quarter.
Why? Why would they go back now?
Well, it comes down to money, doesn't it? Russia's a big market, lots of potential. Some companies might see it as too good an opportunity to pass up.
So profits over politics.
It's a gamble, though. They risked alienating consumers in other countries, maybe even damaging their relationship with the U.S. government.
High stakes indeed.
Ah,
Okay, last but not least, let's talk about the economy. The S&P 500 is hitting record highs, which seems strange considering all the uncertainty out there. Tariffs, the housing market, everything going on. What's driving this market optimism?
it's complicated. Remember, the stock market doesn't always reflect what's happening in the real economy. It's all about expectations, speculation.
So investors are betting on something.
Yeah, they might be betting on certain sectors like infrastructure or technology. Tariffs, while they create uncertainty, they can also benefit some domestic industries, make their products more competitive.
Right, right. Makes those American-made goods more appealing.
Exactly. And then you've got the Federal Reserve, their interest rate decisions. That plays a huge role too.
Affects borrowing costs, how much people are willing to invest.
Exactly. It's all connected.
Like a giant puzzle, constantly changing. So much going on.
Absolutely. So here's something to think about as you digest all this news. How might these American companies going back to Russia, how might that affect the war in Ukraine?
That's a good question. Does it help Russia? Hurt them?
Right. Does it change the global power dynamics? It's a complex issue with lots of potential consequences.
Yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on. Well, folks, there you have it. Another deep dive complete. We've covered it all today. Politics, international affairs, economics, the whole shebang. It's a lot to process, but hopefully this has given you a better understanding of the forces shaping our world,
A lot to think about.
for sure. Thanks for joining us today, everyone, and we'll catch you on the next